Hey Bookaholics, and welcome back to another reading vlog. This reading vlog is a spoiler vlog. Spoilers, okay? Spoilers everywhere. This one is for The Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig. Now, I have been doing a series of vlogs that I am pre-filming that are going to be coming out throughout the summer. I don't know the exact dates of when the vlogs come out. I don't know what order they're happening in yet. So I have a series of vlogs that are happening in which I am reading YA. I've already said this before that I actually really like reading YA that is what other people would call like trashy YA. I understand the term. I'm not one of those that are going to police your language and be like, don't call it trashy, because I understand where it comes from. It's easily digestible, it's brain candy, it's just for funsies, right? That's fine. And I actually prefer that kind of YA because I read it for fun and I read it in a way that it's just for pure entertainment. And the YA books that are trying to have a much wider, more in-depth conversation are slightly wasted on me because I spend the entire time wishing it was adult and going deeper and harder with those themes. So for me, my sweet spot for YA is just ones that are fun and engaging romance that happen to also have some interesting themes throughout the story. And that is something that I have heard from this series. This is a popular series, one that I think I will still enjoy despite really not being much of a YA fan. I have heard this is good for fans that are not normally YA readers anymore, that this series is more like new adult, but obviously new adult doesn't exist as a category anymore because why would we need that? So yeah, I'm excited to try these out. The first book is One Dark Window and the second book is Two Twisted Crowns. In this story, we are following Elspeth Spindle, who has a monster in her head. There was this kind of like a disease that ravaged through this entire country, and anyone who got it eventually manifested magical powers or died. The people who got the powers were then kind of killed off. They were put down on the basis that they would be either a danger or spread the disease. I don't know the exact circumstances. However, our protagonist managed to fake not having symptoms and therefore managed to escape being executed. However, she does have symptoms. She has a monster in her head and it's becoming more and more powerful. And she needs to go collect some tarot that should be able to undo the magic in her head with the help of a con man. I'm sure that will make sense to me once I've read something, because at the minute I'm like, yep, yeah, seems legit. Tarot cards to save lives. Let's do it. Listen, I'm a big believer in tarot. I like tarot. I use tarot. I also use oracle decks. Do I think I could save a plague with it? Possibly not. I have heard good things and I hear the romance is amazing and I've heard really good things about this author's other works. So it's always nice to know that I could be enjoying a new author that then makes me want to read other things. So yeah, we've got these two. Obviously, I don't know the synopsis of the sequel because that would be weird. But I am going to be doing a full spoiler vlog of both of these books. So come join me for the ride. Let's see how I fare with them, see if I like them as much as everyone else does. Alright vlog, I have now read part 1 of One Dark Window, so I thought I would check in. Alright, fine. The hype is worth it so far. I am really liking this writing style. It's really compulsively readable. I know that Raven is supposed to be our main love interest, but I'm also vibing with Elm. That might be an incorrect assumption later on. But for now, I am very excited to continue. We have been following our protagonist, Elspeth, who is infected. We have this world where there was this kind of magical disease that happened, basically caused by like a spirit of the wood, cursed this town. They're now isolated from everywhere else. You can't go, you can't leave this town. There's a forest surrounding it that is cursed. Some people also got cursed and they now have magical abilities, but they also begin to like slowly degenerate so that things go badly for them, basically. It's like they're losing their mind or their body starts to deteriorate or both. Our protagonist got this infection but seems to have gotten away kind of scot-free. People don't know that she had this infection apart from her family, and since she had no magic, everyone was kind of fine with her and they just left her be and she kind of got off lucky. However, it turns out she did have magic. She has a nightmare in her head and she basically pretends that she doesn't have it and no one else knows that she has this magic and she doesn't really trust it. The other part of the magic system is there are these cards, and if you have the card can grant you powers. They're kind of like tarot cards. They're called Providence cards, and the king needs a full deck of cards so that he can break the curse on this kingdom. Our protagonist's uncle insists that they all go to this ball for the equinox that the king is hosting, and when they do, they realize that the uncle has had one of the cards that the king needs, and he's traded it in exchange for paying off all of his debts, and also that his daughter will marry the crown prince. In the meantime, the head of the kind of like police force, for want of a better word, and the younger prince have found out that Elspeth has powers and are trying to recruit her because they themselves are also trying to break the curse, but they are trying to do so in a way that the king is not part of, because the king needs blood to break the curse, and the blood he's going to use is that of a boy who is related to our main love interest, Raven, who is the like chief of police. So there's a lot going on. It's very gothic in vibe and in atmosphere, and we've got like castles and houses, but also at the same time we've got this kind of like dark atmospheric undertone to it that I'm really liking. So I'm really looking forward to continuing and reading part 2. So far I'm really liking the group of people that we've got working together to try and get the cards and to try and bring down the curse. I'm really enjoying that because they think that they're getting rid of the curse will cure them. So we've just found out, like literally a couple pages before this, that Raven, the main love interest, our protagonist, and also our main love interest's brother all are cursed. So the hope is that they will all be saved from this. But we also have Raven's sister and parents also working together to help end this curse so they can save their sons, etc. And yeah, so far I have been having a really good time. So the idea is I'm going to go and slip away, and then when I get to the end of part 2, which I suspect is where a lot of the plot is going to be unfolding, I will jump back in and probably have more to say. But yeah, at the minute our protagonists are going to pretend to be courting, so that's probably where they're gonna get the romancy bits, because we've got fake dating going on, which is going to be fantastic. Let it continue. I have nothing else to say aside from I want to wrap this up so I can keep reading. All right, vlog. An itsy bitsy bit of a mess, but so is my room, so sorry, but I want to keep reading, so I figured I'd check in. I have now finished part 2 of One Dark Window. So we've had some things happen, we've had some revelations, so let's get into it. Let's get comfy and get into it. So first of all, we have it where does this part start? Raven and Elspeth are going to be pretending to be courting so she can go stay at Raven's house with his family so that they can continue to hatch a plot to acquire the remaining 3 cards. They know who has one of the cards. Elspeth also confesses that her father has one of the cards, and then there's just the card that no one has seen ever, really. So we have their budding relationship happening alongside the kind of mission part of it where they need to acquire cards. That we have a kind of heisty bit go on where they need to stop a carriage and pretend to be highwaymen so they can steal a card, because Elspeth can see cards, she can perceive cards. So we're seeing the other prince. So we've got Elm, who is like the good prince, and Hort, I don't know how I'm pronouncing any of these names, and he is the bad prince basically, and he was there and he attacked Elspeth, but she managed to fend for herself, and then she finds out that the nightmare in her head is not actually a nightmare in her head, it is the Shepherd King's kind of spirit in her head, and the more she uses his power, the more he takes over her. She's also, again, in this relationship with Raven. They've had sex. Emery, who is Raven's brother, who the king is planning on using for the blood that needs to be spilled to complete the spell or whatever it is to undo the mist. He ran away, and Elspeth got to talk to him, and talking to him, she's found out that she is intertwined with the king for a reason. Now, it doesn't say what It keeps saying like, you know. So I feel like she is potentially the spirit of the forest, like the spirit that kind of cursed everyone to begin with. She's kind of either she's an incarnation of it, or as soon as she touched the nightmare card and got her powers, the Shepherd King and the spirit of the forest both entered her at the same time. Oh no, I was excited to see that revelation, and yeah, I've been really enjoying seeing the relationship. That's the thing that I'm actually here for, just seeing the interactions between Raven and Elspeth. I also just love the supporting cast. So we have Raven's sister and cousin, and I really enjoy them. We have his parents. Then we also have the relationship-ish that is happening between the kind of the mean prince and our protagonist's cousin, and the way that her cousin has kind of altered from using the card that she was using. And I think there's more to it than that as well, because she covered for Elspeth, because Elspeth's got a broken wrist and the prince knows that he broke his attacker's wrist. So obviously that's like highly suspicious. Her cousin covered for her and was like, oh yeah, you know, when we were out the other day and she fell off her horse, so be careful with her, kind of thing. So that was another thing that I thought was interesting, because again, this cousin is supposedly heartless now because of using the card. So I'm very curious to see what's going on with that as well. Seeing the way that the kind of history of this world is unfolding as well, I'm fairly certain that Raven is a descendant of the Shepherd King, and he's probably going to end up being the actual king by the end of it. We've got a castle at the end of the forest that is derelict, and as soon as we saw that, I was like, oh, because the Shepherd King used to be one of his family, one of Raven's family, and that's the old castle, because the new castle is now for the Rowan throne, and the Rowan family are the ones that have this newer castle that was built after everything that went down with the Shepherd King. And there's the belief the original Rowan king killed the Shepherd King. Oh no. I am fascinated to see where this is going to go. Like, do I love this wholeheartedly, absolutely addicted like everyone else? Maybe not, but I am finding it really enjoyable. I think I liked Belladonna a little bit more so far, but it's probably because I liked the love interest ish more, but we'll see how I felt, because I do really like Raven as a love interest, and as I said, I do really enjoy the supporting cast as well, and I feel like everyone's got layers to them and everyone's kind of got secrets as well, which I'm very curious to see how that's going to pan out. So yeah, my plan for today is to finish this. I am on page 320, so I have less than 100 pages to go, so it shouldn't take me very long. So far, I think that this big main chunk, I don't have a huge amount more thoughts than in the first part, in a way, because this is really character centric. I'm just really enjoying watching those characteristics and their motivations, I suppose, unfurl, why they would be wanting to commit high treason. And then yeah, we've had some action scenes. We had a scene in the marketplace in which the evil prince tried to, I suppose, instill fear in the people, because he brought out a family that had been harboring their child, which is illegal. Like, if your child gets a fever, it needs to be kind of reported to the king, and then the king will do as he sees fit. The parents didn't report their kid. The kid's been discovered, so then they whipped the dad, but then the group of people went and they freed the kid and they freed the family into the mist, which was also fascinating. And I really liked seeing different people's responses to that, because it's like, obviously on the one hand, they're risking their entire plan that would be helping gajillions of people, be helping everyone who's infected, but at the same time, no life is worth the cost. Like, you shouldn't have to pay almost like a blood tithe towards your end goals. And I think that the different ways that different people reacted to that was really good as well. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the way that everyone's motivations and everyone's morals and everyone's involvement and all of that, I think that's being unfolded in a really fascinating way, and I'm really enjoying that. Nothing a huge amount more to add at the moment, but as I said, I should finish this up real quick and then I'll just check back in and let you know my final thoughts. So let's go do that now, and I will see you in a minute. Did this do anything new? No. Did this surprise me in the slightest? No. Not really, not at all. Was it written in a way that meant it was compulsively readable and really easy to get through and super digestible? Hell yeah. And that's what we wanted from the book. that is exactly what I want from My YA. The ending is almost exactly what I thought it would be. We have where our protagonist kind of unleashes her nightmare. She gets caught, she unleashes her nightmare. Now the nightmare has taken over. The Shepherd King has taken over Elspeth, and she did it to protect her friends. Nothing surprising there. She did attack Horth. I didn't expect that. I thought he would be still the main antagonist of the second book, so that was pretty awesome. That was satisfying to see, I'm not gonna lie. She also killed the physician, who is literally an infected, who goes around and discovers who all the other infected are, and she killed him as well. So yes, fuck that guy. So I really did enjoy those elements. I really did think that the creepiness really did amp up in that last bit as well, which I thought was handled really well, and I had a great time with. I mean, even seeing Raven's response to seeing the nightmare in her head when he uses the nightmare card on her, and we have like, they have like almost like a drinking game, but it's with a truth serum, and that was quite good. I think that was handled really well as well, and I'm really fascinated to see what happens with Ione. I really want to see how that's going to go and what's going to become of her in the second book. She's a character I find really fascinating, even though she's very much like not even a secondary character. I'd call her like a tertiary character. So yeah, so far I enjoyed this book. I found it really compulsively readable. I'm excited to pick up the sequel. Is it like new favorite 5-star read? No, not really. It's like a decent 4-star. It's not like a just scraping it, but I also wouldn't say it's like a 4.5 if I were doing half stars. Maybe if I did the storygraph system and did like quarter stars, it would maybe be like a 4.25. I had a good time. I'm glad I read it. I think I am most excited to see what's going to become of the secondary characters in the next book. I think I have a decent idea of where we're going to end up going with Elspeth. It could surprise me, don't get me wrong. It could be that this book is super predictable in a way that then makes the second book even less predictable. I don't know. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with the secondary characters, namely Raven, but obviously, of course, then those around him, his sister, his cousin, his parents, his brother, and then also, as I said, like for example, Ione, and then also the actual king. We had a really great moment between our protagonist Elspeth and her father as well, which I thought was really well handled. I think that their relationship is one that is really well layered and complex. We also did get where our protagonist was basically betrayed by her uncle as well, and I found that impressive as well, like because you've learned to trust the aunt so much, you've kind of overlooked the uncle, because obviously the uncle's been harboring her. So yeah, that was also been fascinating. Yeah, just seeing the outcome of different characters' perspectives and the way that different characters worked at the end of this book and whose side everyone's fallen on. I'm really excited to see where that's going to lead the second book. So yeah, hopefully it will be just as good and just as compulsively readable. And if nothing else, just having a reunion between Elspeth and Raven would be quite nice, given that they've only kind of just gotten together and now they've been separated because she's been caught, and then on top of that she's also now the Shepherd King, and she's kind of been pushed into the recesses of her brain. I enjoyed the atmosphere as well, and the writing style was decent. I really like that we also have the distinctive tone between the nightmare and Elspeth, so you know once the nightmare's taken over, which I thought was really well handled. So yeah, for the most part, decent read, would recommend. So now we're going to go move on to the second book, and we'll see how I fare with that one. That one's also in 3 parts. That will also have 3 updates, and we'll see how I like it and see if it lives up to my expectations based on book 1. Alright vlog, I have now finished part 1 of Two Twisted Crowns, and so far what's been really interesting I think about this first part, so we're following where obviously the direct ramifications of the previous book, where Elspeth has been taken over by the Shepherd King. So he is now in full control of her body. We previously believed was the nightmare that was in her head. She has bartered that she's going to go into, well, the Shepherd King is going to go into the forest to retrieve the Twin Elders to be able to lift the mist. It means that then the king has to let Elspeth go for the time being. She will probably be the sacrifice that is needed to lift the mist, and also it means that the king has to give his word that he will spare Emery and Raven and any of the people that helped her. At this point, we are about to go into the forest. This has been a very interesting start to the book because obviously we don't have Elspeth, technically. We do have where she's in the recesses of her mind and it's kind of merging with the Shepherd Kings and she's starting to see his past. So I suspect that it's going to be how we get more revelations about how this world came to be the way it is, how the Rowans came to be the kings and queens instead of the Yews, because we definitely see that the castle at the end of Castle Yew used to be the king's castle. So back when the Shepherd King was the king. So she's stuck in the recesses of her brain. So we're not really getting Elspeth in the plot. She's just kind of there for exposition at the moment. However, we are getting most of the story from the perspectives of Raven and Elm, which is a very interesting combo. Now, one thing I will say is that throughout books, a lot of the time, the protagonist feels like the least interesting character, right? The protagonist is there to further the plot. They've got to carry the story on their shoulders. And they become almost a little bit of a self-insert, whether intentionally or not, a lot of the time. And the secondary characters are the ones that are really pulling you through because they're what are pulling the protagonist through, right? Removing Elspeth in this book, well, not completely, but removing her kind of, at least in this first part, from the plot, really shows how much of a driving force Elspeth was in the first book. Like how much she really did feel like a really key and core important part of the story in that first book, because it feels very different with her not being so present in this book. Raven is a very angry perspective to be reading, and rightly so. He's been disenfranchised by his kingdom. His kingdom hates his kind, but he's done everything he can for his people anyway. And now it seems like he's going to lose the woman that he loves. Now, obviously, this is very romanticy in the sense of like, you know, he's so madly in love with this woman that he's known for like a couple of months. Yeah, at this point, you just gotta roll with it, really. Like, I'm not gonna criticize it for that. I definitely think that this book is feeling more predictable at the moment. From Elm's perspective, he is being forced to spend more time with Ione, so our protagonist Elspeth's cousin, who used the maiden card to make herself more beautiful, but it also made her heartless. She was someone who previously was really full of life, really vivacious, really happy, and Elm used to be really into her and now kind of has this thing where he's angry at her for losing this part of herself that he admired of her. But they're being kind of thrown together because they're trying to find her maiden card. And what's interesting about her maiden card is that she's discovered that it heals her. She's tethered to the card, so then if she gets hurt, it heals her. And people don't know this about the maiden card. So maiden cards are something that often get given to daughters to make themselves look pretty, and no one knows of the healing properties. And women aren't sharing that information. Why would they? Because then those cards would be taken away from them and used for men. So the fact that the maiden card has these healing powers, but the card is relegated to something merely for women's beauty, I think it's a really interesting conversation that the book is trying to have about the way that we dismiss women and women's power and women's potential and prowess and all of that. I think that's really well done. I really did appreciate some of the discussions that go on in here about the cards and the nothing comes for free mentality of the book that I think is being handled really well. I suspect that the next part is going to be a really chunky part, so it's a good 200 pages for part 2, and then part 3 is shorter again. So I am wondering if that is where the bulk of all of the action is going to take place and all the forest bits and all of that are going to happen, and then we're going to see just the resolution and the way that all wraps up in the third part. We'll see how it goes. I'm not liking it as much as book 1 at the moment. I'm definitely feeling Elspeth's absence, and I am also wanting things to get moving a little bit more. I wanted this to maybe be a bit pacier than it is, although, you know, at the minute it's not really a problem. I'm assuming it's going to really pick up in part 2. So we're just kind of setting up all the pieces at the minute. But because the emotional stakes were all already established in book 1, I didn't need them. But obviously, I guess that is really good for people who aren't binging the series. So we'll see how I fare with part 2 to see if I feel more connected with the book and the pace does pick up, so it keeps my investment a bit higher. Hey vlog, so I'm checking in because I am now finished with part 2 of Two Twisted Crowns, which puts me on page 317. So I'm a decent ways into this now, and sadly, this one, the pace is killing me. It's not good. I'm really liking the characters still, and the interpersonal relationships and the development of those relationships is still solid. And the plot itself I don't have an issue with, and some of the themes that are being brought in, the way we look at a society and who rules a society and who gets to be in charge of a society and why we have certain ideas about a society that are not normally actually in the best interest of that society. All of those things are great, but the pace is not. I would have zoned out of this if it were an audiobook. I would have come back half an hour later into my brain after an outer body experience and been like, wait, where am I? I'm just struggling. At the minute, we have where Gorse, Raven, the twins, Jesper, and Elspeth are all in the forest trying to find the twin elders, and they have to basically go through almost like the forest throws trials at them. They're not really trials. They got captured by a group of people who are infected, who live in the forest, or people who are related to people who are infected, basically people who have fled into the mist, and they got captured by them. At one point, one of the twins died. I didn't care. I didn't give a flying fuck about that, you know? And all because it just felt like we're just trying to prolong what is basically a fetch quest. And let's be honest, anyone who's played a video game, fetch quests are just there to fill time. You know, it's so that the game feels like it's got a bit more substance to it than it does. Most fetch quests are just, oh, go find this thing and bring it back here again. And that's what this is feeling like. It's a whole book that's a fetch quest. We're also getting Elm's POV, and I am much preferring Elm's POV. Bear in mind that Raven's POV is, let's go into the forest so we can find this card so we can reshape the fabric of our kingdom, reunite our kingdom with our neighbors that we have been cut off from for centuries. We can change the way magic works in our world. We can heal the infected. And I like Elm's quest of trying to find one singular card for Ione more. It ain't good, you know? I'm enjoying Elm's perspective. I don't think there's a huge amount of substance to it. It's just him having occasions to be hanging out with Ione. Him being pushed into being the role of heir instead of spare, which is interesting. You're getting to see the psychology of that, which is great. There's a lot more psychology in the interactions between Elm and Ione because of her position and where she's been put, and his position and when he's been put, and the empathy they have for each other while they are doing this quick, let's go hide and seek with this fucking card. The way that we're seeing them almost trauma bonding over their hatred of Horth. All of those things I'm really enjoying. But the pacing is the biggest detriment of this part. It is feeling so slow that I don't care. We have basically Elm and Ione where they need to find the card. They go look somewhere. It doesn't go well. They use a different card to try and see if they can jog her memory. It doesn't go well. They bond over Horth. Elm has a confrontation with the king, sees that Ione is being mistreated by the king. It makes him more angry. Rinse and repeat. And that's happened time and time and time and time again. In the meantime, we have Raven who is going through this forest, and it's like, forest obstacle. Like, here's a river. Here's some people who want you dead. Here's some voices in your head that are going to try and convince you otherwise. And it's like, all right, he's walking through a forest. Like, it's a magical forest, you know, and you keep getting, there's a lot of repetition in this part. There's a lot of, are you a Destria? Are you a traitor? Are you a highwayman? Are you all of the above? There's another name. You know that name in your soul. There's another name. And it's like over and over again with Raven. So there's a lot of repetition going on for both POVs, and I'm really missing Elspeth. And I never thought I'd say that, not because I didn't like Elspeth. Elspeth was a decent protagonist to follow, but I never thought I'd be like, I want less Raven, less Elm, more Elspeth. I just didn't think that would be me, you know? I am struggling. Not enough that I want to DNF, not enough that I dislike the book. There's just things. They feel like a big thing now because I'm ranting about them because I need to get it off my chest. But they're actually niggly things. They're not things that are like, that's enough to make me stop reading. It's more, it's enough to make me zone out for a second and be like, oh yeah, I was reading, I forgot. As opposed to it being like a huge monumental issue, but it is impacting my enjoyment. So while book one was like a solid 4 stars, like, yes, this is fantastic, this one just feels a lot slower, and that defeats the object of why I read read YA, because I read YA because it's pacier, it's quicker, it's more fun. My brain can go on holiday while I'm reading. You know, it's just funsies. Like, let's go. I'm gonna not stop reading until I can't keep my eyes open kind of vibe is what I want from my YA. And this book isn't fulfilling that because the pacing is so funky. Again, an odd one, because yeah, characters, fantastic. Plot isn't bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But the pacing is really a killer, and I'm hoping that now we're going to get through this like last chunk that is just going to be like wrapping stuff up. Horth is still alive, and I don't know how quickly we're going to be able to kill this man off. We've got like 120 pages at most left of this book, and we still have like our big bad to kill. The king is dead, but we've got Horth to deal with now that he's come back from his horrible injury that Elspeth left him with, sadly, because they found out that the maiden heals, because of course they did. No one's known this for centuries, but now just to bring Horth back, men have found out that the maiden heals. Is so exhausting. It's like there are just a few plot inconveniences that are put in there conveniently. You know, I have issues with that, but I am hoping that I will enjoy this more when it wraps up. I still have hope. Not much, but a little. Do you remember one update ago when I was so full of hope? I believed in this book. I believed it could get me there. That the ending would be worth my while. It was fine. It was alright. You know, like it never got what book one had back. This part, now I get I'm supposed to hate Horth. I get that I am supposed to be irritated by his presence, but this felt like the author was deliberately trying to just irritate me. Not make me feel angry, not make me feel defensive or protective, not even make me wish for this man's death. It made me wish the author stopped mentioning him. He didn't add anything new to the story. He didn't increase the stakes. He just increased my irritation. By this point, the moment that we see his downfall, it didn't feel satisfying. It felt like a sigh of relief. I was like, oh, thank God, we don't have to deal with this man anymore. And that is a shame, because I wanted to feel like, yes, we caught him, we got him, fuck that man, you know? And I just didn't feel it. I didn't care. And that's a shame. You know, so all he did was annoy me. Then we have the inevitable, everyone's pairing up. We have the nightmare, having always loved Elspeth, really, because he knew her as a little child and he kind of thinks of her as his daughter. And therefore, he has always tried to keep her safe. So he's going to consign himself to the nightmare card so that he can free himself of Elspeth, and then Elspeth has to deal with, who am I now that I am not at one with this nightmare who has always been in my head? That was interesting enough, I suppose. It didn't feel very groundbreaking. Her and Raven get back together, which is nice, but I kind of lost that tether that kept them going. Like, there's a lot of her desperately wanting to talk to Raven, and the nightmare has to like let her come to the forefront, and then you have Raven desperately wanting to get to Elspeth. But this book's pacing was so shoddy that I lost interest, and therefore my interest was much more on Elm and Ione. This is one of those cases where, because I've said this many a time, I actually prefer romances that focus on different couples per book. In the Belladonna ones, you have basically the first one, which is the first two characters getting together, the second one where there are obstacles in the way and a new character is introduced, and then the third one, which is another couple getting together. I think that pacing worked really well over those three books. This one, I think, yes, Elspeth and Raven had finally gotten together. I think we should have had a bit more time of Elspeth and Raven together. I think they should have been like a fully established couple by the time they're forced to be separated. And they kind of are, like, they've had sex and stuff, but I would have liked them to have had longer together, so that then this book yes, you're wanting Raven and Elspeth to get back together, as opposed to people who had quite an intense crush on each other. I wanted them to be like a really fully fledged, much more established couple. And then this book, basically them wanting to get back together, but the couple romantic focus to be specifically and almost entirely on Elm and Ione. That would have worked better for me. For this to be Elm and Ione's book, the previous one to have been Elspeth and Raven's book. So yeah, it just didn't satisfy me in the way I wanted. I didn't dislike it. It's just scraped 3 stars. I think if I were on Storygraph, this would be more like a 2.75. It's not a 2-star, but it's not a 3, you know? But it's closer to a 3 out of the 2. I've given it 3. It's a very low 3, but it has got 3 on Core Pile. But again, I think if I was doing Storygraph style, it'd be more like a 2.75. It's fine. I wish I'd liked it more because, again, I got really invested in book 1. I got really into book 1, and it would have been nice to have felt the same way about both. So overall, it's a okay series. Like, I really liked book 1. Book 2 was a bit of a letdown. I understand why this is popular. I understand why people maybe wouldn't have the same gripes I had. If you're wanting that kind of like slow, more ethereal pacing that we get in the second one, but it's not what I read YA for. Talking of YA, because obviously these videos are to discuss YA, that is kind of the intentionality behind them, is to see how I'm faring with YA. This one hasn't particularly changed my thoughts on YA. The same way, well, Belladonna to me didn't change my thoughts on YA because I don't think of Belladonna as YA. I think of it as new adult. There's not a huge amount of sex in Belladonna. It's not that it's new adult because it's spicy. It's new adult because our protagonists are new adults. They're in their 20s. This one, I would say, is a bridge one. I can understand people who read new adult still liking this one, but I don't think there's anything in here that makes it exclusively not YA either. I understand the purpose of having YA be a label versus like new adult, but I think new adult needs to be a label, and we need to stop associating new adult solely with sex, with spice. It's not YA with spice. It's not romantasy. New adult is books that are aimed at people aged between 18 and 25. It's that fun, carefree lifestyle of being young carried over. You don't have the same responsibilities most of the time in today's society as you do when you are older, but you are no longer thinking as impulsively. You're not driven quite so much by your emotions and your hormones as you were at 16. But I don't think that we should be separating it based on sex, because I think that teens deserve to know about sex. I think teens deserve to see sex. I think that if we're going to put something like a kink in there, or something that's a little bit more taboo, that should definitely be in new adult and not in YA, because they need to be exposed to safe, consensual, straightforward sex to begin with. That's your beginner's guide to sex, you know? And then later on, you can start spicing it up a little bit. This one could fall in either, and sometimes that's the case. The same way as sometimes you can get books that could be YA or adult. It doesn't matter. This one could be either new adult or YA. This isn't one that I feel this needs to be one or the other, because it's not very spicy. There's not very much in here that is inappropriate for YA readers. I don't think that there is anything in here that doesn't fulfill what we expect of a YA. Likewise, I think that obviously tonally and especially pacing, because as I said, it does have slower pacing than you'd expect for a YA. I think this one would also suit new adult readers, someone who is wanting it to be a little bit more slow, and especially because we have so much focus on like the world building and the magic. So it could work for either, for me personally. I am sad that I didn't love these as much as everyone else seems to, but I understand the hype. It's not one of those I'm going to bash and be like, what are you all talking about? I get it. It just isn't for me. So we'll see how I fare with the next one. As I said, the next one should be the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. So hopefully I will like that one more. I did like the Caraval series, and I believe that this one is, again, a little bit older. I think that Caraval, kind of expecting the readers to grow up a little bit with the books, maybe. So we'll see how I fare. Could have been better. Could have been worse. So let me know what your thoughts on these books were. I'm assuming if you've gotten to the end here, it's because you've read them, with it being a spoiler vlog and all. But if you've not, has this changed your mind? Has it made you want to read them at all? Now that you know how it ends, let me know if, based on my liking of these books, if you have any other recommendations for me from YA, new adult or adult, based on the vibes. I do love me the card magic. That is definitely something that I really enjoy, so I would definitely be interested in more of those. So yeah, let me know, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!